TV.
Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we explore the journeys of interesting people in and around Newfoundland, Labrador, Canada, and the rest of the world.
There is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, lead to great fortune. Welcome to the Perchance to Dream podcast. What an absolute pleasure it is to be on location right here in Conception Harbor, Newfoundland. I'm Allan Dale. With me, as always, my good buddy, Gerry Carew. And I want to tell you, we are in conversation today with a legend in the Newfoundland theatre world. Mary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Mary Walsh, and I was in Codco and the Wonderful Grand Band and Hatching, Matching, and I've been around a lot, and it's interesting because nobody sort of thinks you're that good until you're really old, and then when you're old and people go, has she been doing that for 50 years? Oh my Jesus, she's iconic. But Bert, my God, Bert was my other dog. But the heat, do you find the heat makes your brain go flat? Yeah. There are no bumps in it. My dog Bowser, a very nervous golden doodle who's actually coal black, as Ray Guy would say, as black as as dark as a black cat in a coal mine at midnight, which, pretty well says it. But all the gold is in his heart, I guess.
Hopefully he'll walk up. He's out of the camera shot there now.
Yeah.
We'll get him back here at some point.
Mary, take us through your journey. Where did you grow up, and what were your big influences in life?
Well, I guess, the biggest influence in my life was that my family, who there were, like Andy always used to say, Andy Jones, who I know you talked to also, he used to always say I was an only child from a large family, because when I was 8 months old, the story goes, I got pneumonia, and my two maiden aunts and my uncle lived at number 9 Carter's Hill, and my family, 7 brothers and sisters, well, actually my brother Greg wasn't born yet, lived at number, did I say? Anyway, Aunt May and Aunt Fee and Uncle Jack lived at number 9. Mom and Dad and everybody lived at number 7. And I was in the hospital, and when I came out, it was damp at number 7, so they sent me to live upstairs next door with Aunt May and Aunt Fee and Uncle Jack. And it kind of like maybe they just forgot or something, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I was there, and it was like weird to live next door. That grew up next door to them. And then when I was 11, Mom and Dad retired, and Mom grew up on the Pinch here in Conception Harbor, and so they moved back around the bay. And I actually, weirdly enough, saw them more after that, because one time Mom and Dad came out and got me, whereas I didn't really have that much to do with them. Aunt May and Aunt Fee and Uncle Jack used to refer to them as that crowd downstairs, which was odd because, I knew I used to tut along with the best of them, but I kind of knew that was my crowd, that crowd.
That crowd.
Yeah. So I would say that was a very large influence on my life and caused a lot of bitterness and unhappiness and stuff, which as I got older, I saw the way that things are, that everything that takes something from you also gives you something, like it, every heartache is a gift, really, isn't it? Failing forward, kind of. And I guess, Aunt May was one of the kindest people in the world, and so I always resented my brother Greg, who just lives down the road there, because he was born 2 years after me, but they didn't give him away. And so I was, but then after a long time, when I was about 45 or 50, I began to see Greg as who he was, as opposed to someone who was getting in my way of getting what I wanted, Mom and Dad's love. And really, just love him. I'm so grateful. And I thought I didn't have a family, but I have a great family, an extraordinary family. I just happened to grow up next door to them for a long time. So I know that theatrically, I guess I've always done stories about that family, because the show that's on now, High Steel, Mom's father built Mom's grandfather, Rhodey O'Toole, was, going after the Labrador fishery failed. They went back and forth to New York, the eastern states, building wharves and stuff like that. Then when the Empire State Building, Mom's dad worked on the Empire State Building, and my two brothers worked on the you know, the one that came down.
World Trade.
World Trade, yeah. And a guy from here, Doyle, was called in when they were taking it down finally, you know, doing the thing, because he had been the gang from here topped it out, right? The World Trade Center. Yeah. So, you know, then I thought that was really interesting, you know, you know, yeah, a lot of my work has been about them, you know, because I've always seen them from next door. So yeah, it's a great
perspective.
Yeah.
You could see the forest for the trees as opposed to being in the forest.
Exactly. But I've always seen the surface of things, so I had no idea that I really did have a family and what a great family they were. And like doing this again, we wrote this, myself and Rick Boland and Ron Hines wrote this in 1984, and doing it again, you know, I have a different perspective on it for sure. But you know, it still stands up. Yeah, the music is great, the comedy is funny, and yeah.
Tell me about the early theater days for you. When did you get bitten by that bug?
I didn't. I wanted to be a journalist, which was why This Hour is 22 Minutes, why creating This Hour is 22 Minutes was such a great thing for me to do, because then I got to be a journalist, play a journalist on TV. I sort of failed at everything, school, you know, then I was going to marry this American. I went down to Colorado. That all fell apart. His family hated me. I hated them too. But I think I was just, you know, terrible. And then I came back and there was nothing, and I just was on the PA system at the arcade. John Murphy used to own the arcade store downtown.
I knew John, yeah.
Out they go while they last in our men's department from a fire sale in Montreal. And I just was depressed, and I remember lying on the couch, and I remember Aunt May saying, "Are you all right, darling? Should I call Dr. O'Brien?" Dr. O'Brien was the only psychiatrist in St. John's then. But while I was watching Coronation Street one afternoon, which, you know, so I just lie on the couch and watch CBC, they announced that they were going to have, they were doing auditions for someone to be the summer replacement on a show called Summer Magazine. And CBC Radio was just across the street. And I felt so sure that I would never get it that I went over, and I don't even know, you know, sometimes you don't understand what drives you. It was just there across the street, I guess, because we lived on Henry Street and the CBC studios, radio studios were across the street. So I went over, I did a very good audition, I guess, because I just didn't care.
How old would you have been at this
18.
point? 18?
Yeah. And then I got the job, and then I really did care, and I was terrible. All summer long, the only mail we ever got was some man wrote and said, "Who's the mad giggler on from 10 to 11?
Mad giggler.
But while I was on the radio, Dudley Cox, who was doing shows in the Basement Theater at that time, he and Dave Weiser started the Newfoundland Traveling Theater Company, but at that point they weren't doing that, but he asked me to be in a play, and I again, you know, no reason to say yes, but I went ahead and did it, and Tommy Sexton was in it, and, you know, and of course we all knew each other anyway. I mean, I didn't know Tommy, but I knew his older brother Gary and his brother Marty, and, you know, Greg Malone, I knew his brother Kerry, and Andy and Kathy, I knew Mary Wynn because she went to school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Bob Joy, they used to sit in front of us.
Typical Newfoundland
at
story.
10:30, at the 10:30, 10 or 10 o'clock mass, I don't know, high mass anyway. So yeah, so I didn't particularly know them, but, you know, I knew, yeah. So I did that play, and I was terrible in it. Dudley kept keeping me after it. Yeah, that was like I was just terrible in everything. And then he was starting this where you get $40 a week and travel up by bus all around Newfoundland. I guess that must have been like, anyway, Andy was on it, and Tommy and Jane Dingle and Bob Joy, and we went all around Newfoundland and did this play, an English farce called Pool's Paradise, and also we did The Wizard of Oz. Andy was the wizard. I was the Wicked Witch of the West. I always wanted to be the good witch. And down in St. Lawrence, like where people were screaming when Toto came on in terror, the kids, when I came on as the bad witch, I had to come through the audience, and They were like stepping on my dress and saying, "I'm going to beat the bearings out of you." Like, you know, like they were really, and then they weren't afraid of me at all. Anyway, then we did that, and then we did another one in the fall that Greg Malone came on, because Andy and Bob had gone off. Bob had gone off to Oxford he was the Rhodes Scholar that year, and Andy had gone off to work with Ken Campbell. And Greg came, and then after that, I kind of decided to see if I could get into theater school. So I auditioned, again terribly, for Ryerson. So I went off to Ryerson to theater school, and Tommy and Diane and Kathy, and Greg was already up there with his family and stuff, and Paul Thompson at Theatre Pasmarai gave Tommy and Diane, who auditioned for a show for him, $300 to do a show of their own. And so that's when we wrote Cod on a Stick, which I quit because the Ryerson Theatre School told me I couldn't be in a show because I just pick up bad habits. And so,
really?
Yeah, and so then I got a job at Le Coq d'Or, which Sheila Rogers also worked at, which was quite a horrible place at Dundas and Young. Yeah. And then I lasted about 4 days there, and then I quickly ran back to Codco, and then I quit theater school. Yeah, and came back, and we did a tour of Newfoundland then as Codco with Cod on a Stick. Yeah.
Tell me about those early Codco days.
Well, you know, there were lots of laughs. I remember laughing quite a lot, but a lot of, you know, we were a collective, and we all wanted to be, you know, we were all anxious to have our line in, or, you know, and so there was a lot of tension. Yeah, like tension. And so it was difficult. You know, I always, you know, Kay Annenson used to say to me that I got on the wheel and I wouldn't get off, but having been given away, I always felt outside. So I always felt outside. But then even when I started this hour is 22 minutes, I'm on with Greg Toomey, who I chose, Kathy and Rick Mercer, and I feel outside of that even. You know, I feel like an outsider. Right. I think it comes from being an alcoholic. Yeah. But that's one of the parts of the disease, is you always feel like, you know, outside of everything. But it was really good, and when I look back on Codco now, as opposed to going through Codco, which was very painful for me, I think, oh my God, I learned everything I know from them. You know, I was so lucky. Like Greg and Andy have been writing sketches since grade 1 and been dressing up as the Pope and a priest in the basement, you know. And so they had a wealth of material already. And then, you know, we wrote new stuff for Cod on a Stick, and you know, like I had just done a show with Chris Brooks, and we had Newfie Puppet and Mother England, and so we kind of lifted that idea and did that in, you know, so, and there was a guy called Dave someone in CBC Radio who had gone to interview this man who ran a lighthouse, and the man was one of those taciturn Newfoundlanders who go yes, no. And so Dave was desperately saying, so we're surrounded by all, he'd go, yeah. And then how does it all, and then in the end he thought he'd get him by saying, well, how does it all work? He went, pulleys. So we did that sketch. I remember Tommy was the lighthouse keeper and Bob was the thing. So there was all our lives were, you know, and I remember Sarah, Tommy's parents were Sarah and Ned in the beginning when we, you know, so everybody brought everything to it. And we actually did 2 sketches that, hello, Mrs. Pritchard, Alfred's dead. Yes, it was awful. He fell thousands of feet to his death in the swirling tide below. What did he call you? What were his last words? What did he call you? Did he call you Mom? That's it then. God damn you, Mom. But anyway, so I remember we did that, and we asked Andy's permission to do that because he was in England then. And then when we were on tour with Cod on a Stick, Andy came back, and Bob came, and Bob was already there. And of course, you know, you should talk to Bob, because I don't think Bob's mother ever forgave us, because Bob, the tour got extended, and Bob reached out to Oxford, to Christ Church, I think was his college, and asked them if he could have another couple of weeks off, and they said no.
Really?
And so he quit the, you know, being the Rhodes Scholar and stayed on the road with Codco. I don't think his mother ever got over that, you know.
A lot of risk taking in your life.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you don't mind. You just dove in.
I always think brave or stupid. I don't know. You know, like sometimes I don't, because of that kind of impulsivity that all, again, people who have the disease that I do, you know, you're not always seeing the consequences. Like my husband is always looking at what could happen, and I'm always going, okay, let's just do it.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this hour. You put the team together as you described.
I put that part of the team.
Yeah.
I had gone to see Michael Donovan with an idea. First, the idea was just to do a show Friday night, late night Friday night at the Hall, about the news of the week in Newfoundland, right? And then I thought, because we had just done the Codco TV series, and Michael Donovan had done it with us. So I remember I met him in a Czechoslovakian little restaurant just off... God, I can't remember now the name of the road. And I said that I'd had that idea, and what did he think? And he said, Evan Fitzan, who was running the CBC at that time, he said, Evan Fitzan is looking for something just like that. So... you know, and so I remember going, but before I went to see Michael, I remember going over to Rick and Gerald's and saying, would you do it? Because Rick and Gerald had just done a great show, Charles Lynch Must Die,
yes,
I think.
I saw that,
yeah. And so Gerald said they would do it if he could be the creative producer. So me, I really should have held on to that position, you know, but I never believe that anything's really going to happen anyway, so that could be what makes me brave, is I don't think it's going to happen, so just let's go ahead. I went, yeah, that'd be fine. Then I remember talking to Kathy, and Kathy said, you know, I don't like the news, and the news makes me depressed. And I said, well, that's great, because you'll have a whole different view on things. And then Michael put together this extraordinary team, Jeff Dion, who had been the executive producer of the Halifax News and whatchamacallit affairs. And he came on the road with us, and Henry Sauerphoner never liked Codco, but then he came to Newfoundland to meet us for This Hour is 22 Minutes, because he didn't like Codco because he thought all the characters were overdone, too big, and then he got a taxi in from the airport, and he thought, underplayed.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So when you sat in front of Michael, did you have like a plan laid out?
No.
See,
I was just riffing off the top of my head, because I'd already talked to, like I said, Gerald and Rick and Kathy and Greg Toomey, and they'd already said yes, and you know, and we'd just done Codco, right? And yeah, so when we went in, of course, Kathy and I had the only K thing, whatever that is that you get on TV, that it's like a rating on TV, and we had the highest one because we'd just been on TV, so people knew us. But then Greg and you know, like after the first couple of years, their K rating picked up tragically. But I'm only kidding. No, but it was like I remember, you know. Like I said, I've always been very nervous, like Bowser. But I remember Rick saying, which was funny, Rick saying, doing a little "We Got a National TV Show" dance. And I remember thinking, oh my God, we got a national TV show. Oh, Bowser, wait now, hold on. Bowser's caught up in my button. Hold on, darling. Yeah, and he was so thrilled, just thrilled. Like, you know, we got a national TV show. And I was going, we got a national TV show, oh my God. And actually my back went out. And I was in the hospital for the first show. Oh. I was in the hospital having surgery. But I think, you know, they say there is you know, like how people have type A personality, which leads to heart disease and stuff. There is also a type of person who gets chronic lower back pain, and what they say their personality type is they are anxious and angry, and they won't admit it, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's all there, tightening up the muscles in your back, kind of, yeah. So I guess I was angry about, I don't know what I was angry about, but that was I had to have some emotion, and that was my big emotion. How do I feel about this? Yeah. Somebody's being really nice to me. Makes me angry. So I missed the first part of it, and then when I came back, everything had changed because I had wanted us all to be the producers, and I wanted to be the head writer. And when I went in, I was the head writer, and when I came out of hospital, I wasn't the head writer. And then we weren't going to be, and there were like 5 or 6 producers, and we weren't going to be in the edit suite, which Codco had always been. Of course, they were quite right, and I was quite wrong. If we had been in the edit suite, we never would have. I mean, it's still on the air 30 years after. We never would have lasted because we were. Monday we'd start off without a show, with nothing. Then by Friday night we'd do a live show. Then Saturday the director and the producers were in the edits, and then it was on the air on Monday. Wow. So that would have mean we would have worked a 7-day week in top, But that's what I wanted, apparently. And but anyway, luckily there were saner heads involved, and so then I felt. I think at some point, like in '95 or something, I hit my stride, and I ended up being on the cover of Maclean's and stuff, and like we had gotten a lot of attention. People loved the show right out of the thing, but this was just me. I was by myself on the cover of the thing, and then I didn't get. And I remember thinking, "Wow, I'm on the cover of Maclean's, but am I ever going to be on the cover of Time?" Like I had that disease that it's impossible to get any joy out of stuff because you're always thinking, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? So we were there. There were lots of good times, and they were a great. You couldn't find a better crew than Michael Donovan put together to do This Hour Is 22 Minutes. Just fantastic, and a lot of them are still there. And then Rick and Kathy and Greg Toomey. Greg Toomey, possibly the funniest man in the whole world. We used to have to read our stuff on Wednesday at what Greg called the humiliatorium in front of everybody.
I love that.
Yeah. And Greg would just make you laugh. I mean, he kept us. I don't know if we would have gotten through those first, because of course you don't know if you can do it, if it's going to be any good. And Greg kept us laughing through those first couple of years, through the tension,
Is there, This Hour has been a big part of Canadian culture.
Yeah.
Any one interview, episode, person you interacted with jumps off the page for you?
Oh, for me, it has to be Jean Chrétien.
Okay.
Because he was so funny in his own self, and he was so, that, I'll tell that, that Newfoundland joke about the buddy was getting a horse. He went down to Fairyland, a big white horse, and then then the farmer says he can buy it. He calls him over here, Dobbin, and the horse comes galloping across the field. There's only one other thing in the field, a tree, and he bangs right into the tree. And Buddy from St. John says to Buddy from Fairyland, the farmer from Fairyland, "You're trying to sell me a blind horse." And Buddy from Fairyland says, "No," he says, "Dobbin's not blind. He just don't give a fuck." And in a way, Jean Chrétien, though he did care about things, but in terms of who he was, he was completely, so you always knew if you ambushed him, which you couldn't do very often anyway, mostly they were set up. Other things were real ambushes, but with the Prime Minister, to get in the Prime Minister's office, you got to get in there somehow. But sometimes you'd ambush him, and you'd know if you ambushed him, something funny would come out of it anyway, because he was so funny, right?
Did you ever really piss someone off with that?
Well, Rob Ford, he tried to have me arrested, and and then he said that I frightened his children, but there were no children around. There was, he was just, but then after, I felt bad about it after, because I didn't know that he was a crack addict, and of course suffering from, a disease, and maybe, but anyway, it really pissed him off.
Did you leave it there, or just keep squeezing him a little bit?
Oh, well, I had already left by that time. I was teaching with my husband over in England, just flew back to do that.
Oh, okay.
And I think everybody, and then Stephen Harper, I kissed him.
I remember that.
And I put a lot of orange lipstick on before I did. And then it was like the editorial page of the Globe and Mail, they were outraged, and the Kingston Spectator, people were outraged. And, maybe they were right. But it was interesting because you could get to him and you could kiss, but then as soon as he got power, nobody could get in at all. Like reporters were kept behind a yellow line 12 feet away. Yeah. And he had the girl who took over, one of the women, who took over this hour, he had her arrested. The RCMP took her away in handcuffs from, she used to play this, she used to play this girl who thought he was really cute, and so she went to the news conference and she asked him about like some cute girl question, and then the RCMP took her away in handcuffs. So, you know, I was lucky to kiss him. It was like kissing a fence, really, like if you were kissing a picket fence, that's how much.
With lead paint.
Yeah.
Let's come to the moment here. I want you to tell us about the play that's right here perchance. You say 84 was when you first sat to do it. Tell us about that in 84 and how it's evolved to where it is now.
In 84, was I at the Hall then? Because it was just before 86 when we started the... I may have been program animateur at the Hall at that point, and I'm not sure. Anyway, I'd worked a lot with Rick Boland and Ron Hines, and because I'd done the Wonderful Grand Band with Ron, and myself and Kathy joined the Wonderful Grand Band. Oh, I just have to tell you this. People loved Tommy Sexton and Greg Malone so much, and they would play women. But then Kathy and I were in the show for a whole year, and we'd be on stage, 4 people standing on stage, and people would think that Tommy and Greg were so talented that they would be us, that they would be themselves, and then they'd be us too, like if they were women. No, I know. They thought. Anyway, we did what we always did in collectives. We came to Conception Harbor and Colliers and Avondale, and we interviewed people, and we got stories from people about the past and stories about what's going on. And we spent a lot of time interviewing my family, because when we opened at the Hall, my mother came to the show, and she said, "That bastard, she stole all my best lines," which I did. Like somebody said to me the other night, somebody from Conception, I said, you know, sometimes I just say things and they turn out to be mean, sarcastic things, you know, and I don't want to do it, and I just do it. And she said, "Yeah, trying to be like your mother, and but you'll never be like your mother, because she was really funny." But she didn't mean it in a, you know, and it was nice actually. She said, "Oh, I loved your mother, everybody loved your mother." And then my son said to me, "Yeah, everybody loved your mother except you." And of course I did love her too, but you know, the fact that she gave me away when I was 8 months old, I kind of got in the way. Yeah. But so we collected all these stories, we wrote all these. So I remember writing Biddy's Day Off with Ron Hines, who was an extraordinary wordsmith and songwriter. And we went, Biddies they were usually Irish women, but Newfoundland women who came up from here were called Biddies too, and they went into service, and they'd have Thursdays off. And so we said to Ron, "We got to write a song about the Biddies. We got to do something about the Biddies." He said, "Well, what do they do?" And I remember Rick and I naming off, you know, getting up in the morning, you know, lighting the fires, emptying out the chamber pots, you know, all that. Within like an hour, Ron came back in with this great number. I guess you haven't seen the show.
Not yet, no.
Biddy's Day Off. And yeah, it was, I remember having a lot of fun doing it. And yeah, I guess, you know, Rick and I had been writing together for a long time, and Ron and I had been working together for a long time too. So it was a very comfortable group, and it was like, and then we were like interviewing my mother, you know, and, you know, my brothers and stuff, you know, and then friends of people. And then I went to New York to get money from the union in New York, because we were and then this guy, the business agent, asked me, and he had said they'd give us $10,000, which was, you know, good. And he asked me to go to Atlantic City. I thought, oh, okay, you know, like, so on the way down, he's like saying, you know, that all unions, all the big unions in New York are involved with the mafia, but the, you know, the iron workers are not, but every hotel union, you know, they're involved with it. But I rode with Kennedy, and then, of course, he wanted me to stay with him overnight in, you know, and he was just so outraged that I wouldn't, because he had rode with Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like, what was wrong with me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so we went to New York. My brother was building a big building at that time, Mike, that they'd taken down. They were putting up the Marriott Hotel. It was 110 stories, and they were up at 108 or something like that. And I remember going up in the building across the street, because I wouldn't go up in the man cage, because it was just too scary. Yeah. Even in the building, then the building was at 90 stories, and you could see, you know, and I just didn't even want to be near the window, so I don't have any of that. But yeah. All the brothers kind of went at that. Yeah.
So to see it come to life here in Conception Harbor.
Oh, that is so good.
Tell me about what it feels like.
Oh, it feels really good, and people really love it. Like Jody was just saying, you know, like he says a line like, "It's not my fault I was, you know, born in New York. Dad was born in Silver Springs. Mom was born up on the Pinch." And he said, when he said Silver Springs, yeah. And then when he said in on the Pinch, yay! You know, so people. Somebody said to me the other day, "Thank you for bringing this to Conception Harbor." And when they were opening Perchance, and they were getting the convent, I said to Danielle, you know, it would be great to open with High Steel. And I just said it off the top of my head, you know, not thinking that she would go ahead with it. And then they did, and I think it was really smart, because I think the community will be here with Perchance, you know what I mean? Like, they do a fabulous job of all the work that they do, and the Shakespearean work. They opened up Shakespeare for me, because I was just like, I don't know what in the fuck you're talking about all the time, right? You know, even, you know, you go to Stratford, Stratford on Avon, and people are just blah, 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 blah. But with Perchance, they know what they're saying, and so you know what they're saying. But anyway, but sometimes, you know, you wouldn't get the community with you necessarily, but I think this has really, you know, opened up. Yeah, like, so they'll fit in.
It is.
Yeah.
Community is very important to Perchance, there's no doubt about it. They want to lay the roots deep, and what a better way to do it. With this opening show, for sure. Tell me about the importance of a theater really meshing with the community.
Well, you know, I don't know. We always, you know, we did Caught on a Stick, and it was about Newfoundlanders, and we did Sickness, Death, and Beyond the Grave, which were the three. When we did Caught on a Stick, we traveled around Newfoundland, and the three big topics of conversation were sickness, death, and beyond the grave. Still to this day, it's the same with sickness and death. Beyond the grave has kind of fallen out of favor these days, but back in '73, it was still big. And so we always did, you know, shows like we did The Capitol, which was about, you know, the way that they were going to tear down everything on Water Street and put up a 4-lane highway right up through Queens Road. And we always did stuff that had to do, so when I was working at the Hall, we did Terrace de Bacalhau, which was about it was purportedly about the Portuguese, but really it was about the women downtown who spent time with the Portuguese, you know what I mean? And then Making Time with the Yanks, which was about the Americans, but it was about all the people during the war who, you know, and so we've always done, and we've always, everybody's always come to it, because people, we had a lack of seeing ourselves in a larger context, didn't we? I mean, when were we ever on TV except as slightly simple-minded, horny-handed fisher folk in an NFB documentary? And so community is everything to me, because, you know, like, well-acted, well-structured 3-act plays are all very well, but that is an elitist kind of when I say elitist, I don't mean elitist, but it only appeals to a certain class of people. The people who have $50 to spend, to $100 to spend on the tickets, $25, $50 to spend on the parking, another $50 on the babysitter. You know what I mean? And so I've always been, you know, and you know, it isn't just me. You know, we came about when, you know, Paul Thompson and them were doing the Farm Show, which was a about the people who lived at mile 10 up in Gottingen, and they went and talked to them, and then they put the show on, and it was a massive hit, all over the place, because it was representing people, right? The stories were there. And so is that a good answer to?
It is.
Yeah,
of course it is. Yeah. I find it fascinating whether talking to somebody in the arts community or in the business community in Newfoundland. It's such an incredible place that we live here. Resiliency and creativity and everything comes together. What is this secret sauce from your perspective? Because a lot of good things come out of this place.
Well, I guess sometimes I think it's because we were a country, so we had to do everything for ourselves until 1949. So that's 75 years. It'll be 75 years. 75 years?
But in 2024, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's why, it's because we were used to. My father used to say, the astonishing thing isn't how friendly Newfoundlanders are, but how adaptive they are. Because he said that when Argentia opened, they were looking for electricians, and people who had never seen electricity in their whole lives went down and became electricians, because you had to. Yeah. It's like when they killed we lived subsistence, so we had to learn to do everything. So, people, are actors and writers and directors and producers and money raisers, and because you have to do it all, because when we came back here in 74, there was no structure except the university, and thanks be to God, Memorial was so good to us. They gave us rehearsal space, they let us play at the little theater. Oh my God, thank God for the university. And then I think, we hated Joey so much, and he did turn into a dictator for sure, but he had a lot of great ideas. He did, it's too bad he didn't let go at some point and just go on, instead of just being there trying to control everything, Yeah.
Mary, what are you most excited about for Perchance and for your show this season?
Well, I just feel like I think there's 147 seats or something, maybe 148, and we had 147 people yesterday, and they got a standing ovation, and of course, I'm just really excited because you never know. Like you think, oh my God, when we started to do it, I thought, are people going to be insulted?
Yeah.
Are they going to be upset? Because I call them Costellos, but it was really about our family, like the ongoing. And I thought, I got to change the name. I got to change the name from Costello's because they'll be, it's not fair. It's not fair to, no, they're wrong. But so I changed it to Costigan. So I said to my brother Greg, I changed Costello's to Costigan because I said, because there's no Costigans in Conception. He said, there's fucking a shitload of Costigans over in Harbour, Maine. So anyway, so I was just really relieved that people love the show in the same way they did. We did it again in 2004. Johnny Harris was in it, and Steve Cochran, and the Once, Phil Churchill from the Once. They were a great crowd too. It was wonderful to do it with them. And so this is its third iteration. So it'd be nice if it just kept going, it would be nice if it was, oh my gosh, so like every 20 years, is that it? It'd be nice if it was a little faster than every 20 years.
20.
I'll be dead by then.
Well, I have to tell you, it's incredible. You've added so much to the culture of this place and kind of amplified the culture of this place to the rest of the country and the world. It must be an amazing feeling for you to have added so much. Do you think of it that way, or
no.
do you just think about, I'm getting through this every day?
Yeah, no, I never think about it that way. I suppose that you could, but no, I never think about it that way. I always think, why don't I have two series on CBC? Mm-hmm. I think, what is going on there? There's, them, they're against me.
Yeah.
But, no.
Still goes on today?
No, yeah, well, I was, Mark's got two shows on CBC. This Hour is 22 Minutes, a show I created, and Son of a Critch, both of which brilliant shows. Johnny Harris has two shows on CBC. He's so good. Oh. I know, but you just go, fellas, if you have a dick, you can have two shows. Only kidding. But you know, those, as opposed to thinking, oh my gosh, I've done so well, I always think, well, I would like to keep going, but I mean, at some point, I suppose, unless you're a painter like Manet or something, or Monet, I never know which one it was, who did some of his most famous work in his 80s, people just expect you to step back. And this is a new country, Canada is a new country, so we're always looking for the new, and we kind of, you know, like in England, you can work until you're 100, and people keep hiring you, and they base shows around you, and you know what I mean, but we're always looking for the brand new. So, you know, sometimes that's, but I don't think bitterly about that anymore. I just think, oh, that's interesting that that's the way it is. So I just keep going at stuff that I want to do, like we're doing the Mrs. Downstairs with Dave Sullivan, and he wrote in the Facebook thing, and I thought it was so funny, so I wrote to him and I said, Dave, you know, this is so funny. I said, I was born to be the Mrs. Downstairs.
You must have fell off the chair when you did that. Like,
I don't know.
I'd love to interview him. Tell him we don't want to talk to him.
Okay, and so we're going into our third season. They've already asked us to do the fourth. Now, there's no money in it, and you know, like you're only on 5 TV, which is sort of like a community channel. Yeah. So it's kind of embarrassing in a way, but at the same time, we have such a good time and so much fun, and I don't have any of those feelings that I had, say, at the beginning. When we started, it was just great. I just have a great time.
You do it for the love of doing it.
Yeah. Well, I guess always I did, but I guess I have raging ambition, maybe, you know, like raving ambition. I don't even know. Like Tommy would always, he was Oliver when he was 7, you know, and he always was a song and dance man, always wanted to be a star and stuff like that. And I always wanted to be something, but I didn't know what.
You've spent a life surrounded by creativity and added to that creativity. It must be amazing to be in that creative space all the time.
What I think is, I feel so lucky to have been in Codco, and then to have been in the wonderful Grand Band, and then to have had a chance to do Up at Hours, and to work with Ray Guy, and to work with all those extraordinary people, and then to do Hatching, Matching, and Dispatching, but this hour is 22 minutes first, and then to do the CV series of Codco. Like, yes, it's just like, you know, Sandy Morris and Ron Hines, I got to work with them, you know, and they, you know, were just extraordinary people. And Ray Guy, Ray wrote 3 plays when I was, for us at, and so I got to spend, and of course I was Mrs. Ball on Up at Hours, which was a TV series. I was only 27. I was playing someone who was 60. So people always go, my God, you look young. I go, yeah, because, you know, I've been playing 60 for, you know, 50 years. Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure to be in conversation with you. I really can't thank you enough for coming on the show and for lifting Perchance as well and bringing that to the community. It's been absolutely wonderful. Jerry, your thoughts?
Mary, you've entertained so many, and this interview has been so entertaining. We could go on for another hour, but we have to respect your time and everyone else's. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, Grace, thank you guys.
Here we are, Gale Force Winds, and we are in the beautiful town of Placentia, and we're showcasing this wonderful part of Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm Allan Dale. With me, as always, my good buddy Gerry Carew. How you making out, Jerry?
Well, we're here because of the word Argentia versus Argentina. Yeah. Why don't you tell that story?
Well, you know what? I don't even want to get into the story, but we're going to call this little clip "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." So, Cindy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Cindy Fulford. I'm from Fox Harbour, a little town about 20 minutes from here. Yeah. And I have a story, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a great story. So why don't you start right from the beginning?
Okay, I'll start from where I met you guys. Yeah. So we're at Tim Hortons today, and I overheard
Jerry
saying something about Argentina. So, and I said, excuse me, I'm not eavesdropping, but you were eavesdropping. I was not. You remind me of my father, I said, because when he came to Newfoundland for the first time, he was 18 years old, he was a Marine. He thought he was coming to Argentina, and he came to Argentia, he said.
Well, I was doing a social media post, and my phone kept correcting me to say Argentina, and it was driving me crazy. That's why I said to Alan, it keeps saying Argentina,
I
and then you spoke up, right?
Yeah.
So your dad was a Marine, 18 years old, stationed to...
In Argentia. In 1960. It was his first time. He came from, it was his first time as a Marine.
Right.
And he lived in Garfield, New Jersey. And when he was 18, he enrolled in the Marines, and he came to Argentia for the first time.
Wow. It must have been quite a shock for him
He couldn't
arriving
believe it.
here.
He said he can't remember. Well, of course, I talked to him, 40 years later, and he said that he can't remember anything about it except cold, fisherman, and he remembered the words of one line of a song. Fishing in a dory in the banks of Newfoundland. That's what he said.
How long would he have been here?
He was here 18 months.
So you just mentioned that there's a 40-year gap. Tell me about that.
Okay, so he was stationed in Argentia, and apparently he met my mother, and they had a little fling. I guess it was more than a one-night stand. They were there for a few dates, Ned, and for a while. And it was 1960, and of course it was very poor back then, and people were just wanting to get out of here, at that time. But so I'll go 40 years later. So anyway, when I was 18, I started searching for him because I didn't know him. I never met him. So when I was 18, I started searching. First thing I did was went to the base and I met the chaplain. And I asked him if he could help me, and he gave me some venues, but couldn't really disclose any information.
Right.
So he just said, do this, and anyway, nothing. So I gave up. And then, so maybe a few years, I don't know how many years later, I started again. And I wrote Oprah Winfrey, and I wrote Jesse Raphael, and I wrote Maury Povich, and asked them if they could help me. American Embassy, Canadian Embassy. So someone said if I write a letter to, so by then, I was married and had 2 kids. I was looking all this time, back and forth, but still dead ends. So I was about, I'll say 30, and I said, I'm going to really do this. I'm going to search more. So I wrote the American Embassy, and I told them, I said, I know you can't give me information, but can you please forward this letter on to my father, Andy Susko. I knew who he was because of his name on the back of a picture.
That's
I had
all
a
you
picture.
had?
Yeah, I was raised by my grandparents. My mother lived in the States, and I really didn't know her. She was like a distant aunt because my grandparents raised me from 3 days old. And she married an American, went in the States. But anyway, so I found this, like I said, this name, and I wrote the man, and I said, I know he had, the American Embassy, and I said, I know he had to be here in 1960, because I was born in 61. Yeah. And telling you my age now. And anyway, I said, I don't want anything from him. I'm married, 2 kids. I just want you to forward this information. They sent me back the letter. They said, I'm sorry, we can't tell you anything about him. Right. So it was another dead end. So there was this thing on the internet about the base, saying that, naval, anybody who have any connections to the base, you could put your name here. And anyway, I put my name and phone number, which is really stupid now, anywhere that could take my name and phone number, and an address. And one day, I had a little email from someone, and she said, you're looking for Andy Susko? And I said, yes. She said, I'm sorry to tell you, Andy Susko passed away whatever year, and my regrets are with you. And I write back, who are you? Like, how do you know Andy Susko? And she wrote me back again, and she said he was stationed in Harnham, in Newfoundland, or Stephenville, Newfoundland. Right. And I said, nope. It's not him.
That's not one.
So I continued. So every time anybody went to the States, I had friends who were from the States but living in Fox Harbor, I asked them to bring me back a phone book. So anytime I found Andy Susko, or anybody went and found a Susko name in the phone book, they wrote it down, and I called every one of them. So that was for 22 years from the beginning till the end. So the 22nd, so I'll stay. So I called them all, and they, no, I'm sorry, I wasn't stationed in Newfoundland, or no, I'm sorry, it was A Susko, it might have been Ann. Right. So anyway, this day I had an email from this woman from Ohio, and Marguerite Dawson Bomberry was her name, and she said, notice my
What year is this now?
So it's 2000, I guess.
Okay.
2000, yeah. So she emailed me and she said, you know, I see you're looking for your father. I think I can help you. She was also, her father was an American serviceman and she never found him. And when she did, it was too late.
Okay.
So she asked me, would it be okay if I help you? So, please. So it didn't cost any money. She wanted $20. So in case it was for long distance phone calls, because you're talking, you know, there was no free phone calls then. So anyway, she did, and so this day she emailed me, she called me, she said, Cindy, I found something, and so she said, so I was looking into 50 states, I never looked outside, I never looked international. So one day she said, Cindy, I found something. She said, I found a restaurant open in, this pop-up keeps coming up. She said 3 times, so I kept closing it, but it keeps popping up again. And so she sent it to me, the link, and it was a new restaurant opened in the Caribbean, St. Martin, owned and operated by New Jersey's own Andy Susko. And I said, Margarita, I never found a man from New Jersey before. I don't know where he was from, but maybe in the back of my mind someone did tell me that, like, you know. So anyway, she tried to get a hold of him and couldn't get a hold of him. So she put a thing in the paper saying that she was doing a genealogy search on the Suskos and could Andy Susko please call her. So this was in the Caribbean, in St. Martin. So 3 times she put it in the newspaper, and the 3rd time someone contacted her and said, I know who Andy Susko is, and I'll let him know that you're looking for him. So she did. The lady's name was Veronica. She called and she said, Andy, there's someone looking for you. They're doing a genealogy search. He said, I don't understand what they're doing a genealogy search for. So to set up an appointment. So she called him, and he wasn't home. His friend Bob was there, and so she said, you know, I really want to speak to Andy. And Bob said, well, I'm sorry. Andy had to step out for an emergency, but feel free to ask many questions. Me and Andy's been friends for years and years. So she said, you know, if Andy Susko was ever a Marine? And he said, oh my God, yes, he was a Marine, but that's like 40 years ago. Yeah. She said, sir, I really need to talk to Andy. This is going to get personal. He said, no, fine, it's fine. He said, just go on. What else do you need to know? He said, do you know if he was ever stationed in Newfoundland? He said, he was, but again, that's 40 years ago, and he was a Marine. And she said, sir, I can't go any further with this. I really need to speak to Andy Susko. He said, look, what do you want? I am Andy Susko. What are you looking for? He thought it was someone looking for money.
Wow. Wow.
So she said, do you remember a woman by my mother's name? And he said, oh, man, you're talking 40 years ago. I can't remember yesterday. He said, well, you know, she was from Fox Harbor. He said, I do think, I remember a lady from there. He said, yeah, I do. He said, I think I dated her a few times. And he said, well, sir, that woman had a baby 40 years ago. And right now she's sitting by the phone waiting for you to call him, because I knew this was all coming about, right? That she had to call me, told me she was waiting to talk to him. He said, listen, you're telling me I have a daughter? I have no daughters. I have 2 sons. No, sir, you have a daughter, and she has 2 children. He said, I have no grandchildren. You tell me I have grandchildren? He said, yes, she has 2 children. He said, listen, I never heard of this before. This is the first I heard of it. Give me some time. He said, my head is spinning. Give me some time to get my head together. And he said, I will call her after I talk to my wife and tell her what's going on. So she called me. She said, Cindy, you're not going to believe this. I found him. And, wow. And I said, no way. She said, yes, and I'm here crying, right? And she said, I said, Marguerite, I got a long distance beep, and I'm going to have to answer. I bet it's him because it was on no number. She said, no, don't answer the low. Stay there. I want to tell you more about him. He never knew you existed, and it beeped again. I said, Marguerite, I gotta go. I gotta get this call. And anyway, I answered the phone, and I said, hello. And he said, hello. I said, and I'm crying my heart out. I said, oh my God, is this who I think it is? He said, yes. He said, my name is Andy Susko, and I think I'm your father. With his New Jersey accent. Anyway, he started asking me questions, you know, about what color my eyes, for one thing. And I said, I don't know what color tell you my eyes are. They're not green, they're not brown, I guess they're hazel. I said, what color are your eyes? He said, well, they're not green, they're not brown, I guess they're hazel. Yeah. And then we started asking questions, and then every minute, can you send me pictures? And my mother had some kind of a bump on her nose, and he said, I do remember your mother, but I didn't know, because I didn't know she had a bump on her nose, and she had surgery to remove it. So he said, yes. So then he kept calling me and emailing me, Cindy, I'm going to send you my pictures of my grandma. His parents had passed away. His mother had just passed away. I never got to meet her, a few years before. But he starts saying things about, tell me the history of his family. And I remember years ago I went for somewhere for a facial, and someone said, Cindy, your skin is different. It's not like the way, Newfoundland skin. It's like you're olive. And so I said to my father, so, like, where are you from? Where's your parents from? He said, my father was from Czechoslovakia, and my mother was from Italy.
Wow.
So she was Italian, yeah.
So, did you get to meet him?
My father?
Yeah.
So that was in January. It was my 40th birthday by then, and he said, Cindy, I got to meet you. And I said, well, Andy, I was never on a plane in my life. I'm not going on no plane. He said, you have to. I have a business. I can't leave my business. So he had a restaurant in Orient Beach. So I said, no, I'm not going. But anyway, by March, he had me convinced. So he sent me a ticket, and I got on a plane. 3 planes to get there. They had to de-ice the plane in Newfoundland and in St. Martin. When I got off the plane, it was like a big wall of heat. Oh my God, I never experienced anything like it in my life. Yeah. So, he was there to meet me. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself now. So I told the stewardess that it was my first time on a plane. I'm scared to death. Like, I don't know what to expect. Not like nowadays, but she brought me into the pilot, showed me the cockpit and all the buttons. And I said, I don't think you should have showed me that. It was too scary. Yeah, so anyway, got on the plane, and 3 planes. The 3rd plane, they said in half an hour we're going to land in beautiful St. Martin. I started crying. I couldn't stop. I was crying my heart out because it's,
I know.
It was finally come together, right? And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what he was, So anyway, here I'm crying and crying, and finally landed plane. All these women are around me. My God, honey, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And I couldn't get to tell them. So we're just about to get off the plane. I had my suitcase, and I said, I'm meeting my father for the first time. And here's all these women crying with me, pushing me out the plane because they wanted me first so they could follow me and see what was going on, right? When I got there, all the media was there with my names.
No.
Yeah, all the newspaper and the radio, and there he was at the airport, and there was no flowers at the airport in St. Martin at that time. All the flowers were gone. I don't know what happened. So here was this big man from New Jersey with a long gray ponytail and a big old artificial teddy bear, iguana. Oh. That's how I was. Because I remember I said to him, how am I going to know who you are at the airport? And he said, I'll be the only one there with no clothes on because he has a restaurant on a nude beach. But it's not true. But yeah, anyway, so somebody took pictures, this professional pictures. He was National Geographic photographer. He was there and took pictures.
Wow. Of you guys?
Yeah, pictures. And
you'll be able to email that to us, will you?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I can email some pictures to you, yeah. And newspapers were there and did an article on us.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So did you see him again after that?
Then every year for 12 years, he sent a ticket. Every year I went to see him. And my
you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
And your kids as well?
Yeah, my kids went a couple years, yeah.
And they got to meet him?
Yeah.
Wow.
As I was driving through St. Martin the first time, people had signs on the side of the road. My father was in St. Martin. It's not a very big island. He was in for 30 years, over 30 years. People had signs on the side of the road. Hi, Cindy, welcome to St. Martin. Hi, Cindy, welcome home. Yeah, yeah.
So what does St. Martin mean to you? It must be a soft spot in your heart.
It is, yes. But now I never want to go back. He's gone now.
Yeah.
It's different now. And the restaurant's gone also, the Hurricane. He lost many. I think it was 3 times he lost his restaurant.
What
and
was
then
the
you
name
don't have insurance. Well, that one was, that was Andy and Cheryl's. But it was Surf Club South, it was called at one time. It was on Orient Beach. Yeah.
So in the conversations, it must have brought back to your mom and like time here, and must have been a flood of memories for him, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, he said he couldn't remember a lot about it. He was so young, and like I said, he thought he was coming to Argentina.
He was 18, you said, when he was here.
18, wow.
An 18-year-old Marine stationed up here.
Yeah.
What a beautiful story.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we focus on conversations with leaders, business owners, and change makers that inspire. Please tune in next week.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.